Pushkin.
This is an iHeart podcast.
Previously on Deep Cover.
In Michigan, in the early 1980s, an FBI agent named Ned Timmins followed a hunch. He believed that a drug ring was smuggling massive amounts of pot into America. And he thought that the local biker gangs were involved in some way. So Ned went undercover, using a new name, Ed Thomas. He grew a Fu Manchu mustache, rode a Harley Davidson, and started hanging out in roadside honky-tonks, all the while gathering intel.
Well, I had sources up in northern Michigan, bikers, and they would talk about the bikers would get their supply of weed when these big shipments would come in, which is 50,000 pounds, 100,000 pounds, or whatever would come into the Detroit warehouse.
Ned kept hearing chatter.
There's this huge deal out there, and it involves shrimp boats and barges and airplanes. And so I told my bosses about it, and they kind of said, well, yeah, right, Timmins, what are you smoking?
Ned heard that this pot might be headed to a storage facility somewhere in Detroit, the El Dorado of stash houses. Over at the FBI, Ned's bosses had their doubts, but Ned stayed on the trail of intel, hanging out with his informants.
Whenever I walked into a house or one of their houses or hotel or where they were, I always had it in my head, okay, what if this happens? What if this happened? And I would go through a checklist of what I would do. I always had a gun, obviously, and you're always looking. Half the time I turned around and those guys had guns, and they're not supposed to.
Ned's main informant was still Toby Anderson, the violent, erratic biker/country western singer.
Toby was a hand grenade with a pin out. It was just a matter of time till he self-destructed or just died in a hail of bullets or something. You just couldn't control him. He's just crazy.
He was difficult to manage, yes, but he was also giving Ned just enough, crumbs. He'd connect him with other bikers. He'd help him set up drug busts. Enough so that Ned could tell his bosses, look, I'm making progress. Like at one point, Toby introduces him to another criminal, and together the three of them set up a sting out in California. Their plan was to get meth from some dealers way out in the sticks.
There's a big field and there's mountains up each side, and there's some hillbilly there at the gate, and he meets us and gets us through this gate, and it's just a 2-track sagebrush, cactus, and just high mountain desert. And we get near the barn, and out comes this frickin' 500-pound pig. I mean, a big pig. And I said, what the fuck is it? Oh, that's the guard hog. That's what I mean. I said, well, he smells people if they're, in the mountains or trying to surveil us or whatever. And that's true. A pig has one of the best noses in the world.
What really surprised Ned is what these hillbillies are feeding their prized guard pig.
They'd soak a sweet onion in meth and throw it to the pig. The pig loved it. I mean, he's like, he wanted a fucking onion. And, I didn't really trust him because he's really fucking big and he's got tusks and shit.
And this was Ned's life now, sneaking past a drugged-up pig.
Slide open the barn door and it's all hay. Pull out a bale in the middle and you can crawl through the tunnel, through the hay bales, and you come into a big room. And there's 30 stations set up for when they cook.
Ned said it was the biggest meth lab he'd ever seen. He handed off the intel, and a few weeks later, the authorities busted the place. And it also clarified something for Ned. Yeah, he was a full-time undercover FBI agent, trying to figure out if the rumors he'd been hearing were true. But he also had another, maybe equally important job title now: babysitter.
We're driving someplace, and all of a sudden Toby's in the back seat and pulls out a gun. Well, he could have just as easily popped one in the back of my head, but I was so pissed at him that we, pulled over, took the gun away from him, and threw it off the cliff. I mean, he knew he had his tail between his legs. He knew he got spanked.
I'm Jake Halpern, and this is Deep Cover. Episode 2, What Will the Neighbors Think? Ned kept pushing Toby for intel, and sometimes, apparently, Toby would just lose it on Ned, saying that he was scared their cover would be blown, that word might get out among Detroit's biker gangs that Toby was an informant and that they were working together. In Ned's noir novel, he depicts one of Toby's panicked rants. Toby tells him,
"They'll kill us, brus. We fuck up, and they'll kill us, you understand? No one will even find the bodies. Just shoot us and stick us in a vat of acid or some shit. And you have any idea how fucking dangerous this shit is?" Ned nodded, but Toby grabbed him by the arm, leaned in close. Close enough he could smell the ether, the cigarettes, and the BO. "Do you, bruz? You fucking better, 'cause it's me and you out there dangling, right over the goddamn edge."
The dialogue may sound a bit stilted, but Ned insists the essence is accurate, and that, in a way, the distrust was mutual. Ned was keenly aware of how dangerous, how precarious their relationship was becoming.
You don't just go out in an hour and do something and get a fugitive or whatever. We work for days sometimes. We're staying in hotels, we're traveling, we're flying together, we're driving together. If you don't trust that guy, you got a problem, because my neck is at risk and his neck is at risk and both of us are at risk. So I better trust him and he better trust me for the stuff we were doing.
Despite the risks, Ned was increasingly comfortable in his new habitat. Not just that, he kind of liked it. Liked being Ed Thomas. Liked riding his Harley, staying out late in the bars, gathering intel.
I must, though, because I was doing it. There's a lot of adrenaline to it. You're out there on the edge, hanging onto the edge of the cliff with your fingernails all the time.
No one at the office was exactly telling Ned to go to these lengths, but he felt that he needed to be on duty all the time to do his job right.
We did a zillion other drug deals, so we always had something going on.
What does this do to your home life?
Destroys it. You live it 24/7. You're always waiting for the next call, whether they wreck a car, steal a car, break into a house, shoot somebody, stab somebody. It's endless. It's like taking care of juvenile delinquents that are adult killers.
Back home, Ned's wife Kathy was discovering that her husband's alter ego was taking over. Ed Thomas now needed his own room.
We had 3 bedrooms. One was more like a guest room, and I think we had a desk in there and stuff like that. I recall that he said, "Hey, they're going to put in an undercover phone here at the house, so if it rings, I'm going to, here's your name, and just, answer it and be cool, act like you're my girlfriend." I go, "Why do I have to act like I'm your girlfriend? Why can't I just be your wife?"
Kathy was an FBI agent in Detroit too, and she'd also gone undercover. Just once.
I did one undercover thing one time, and I was not at all comfortable with it. I felt like everybody can look at me and see that I'm a cop.
Kathy had spent the night at a gambling joint run by the mob, getting to know the criminals. Then the cops busted in. "Everyone, hands up against the wall." Then they told Kathy, "You're good. You can put your hands down now."
But I just was like, no, I don't. I'm so embarrassed now in front of these people who have been so nice to me all night. And I just wanted out of there. I was just like, yeah, don't ever make me do something like that again. That's not me. I'm not comfortable in that situation. I feel like a big fat liar is written like all across my forehead.
Her husband, Ned, he didn't seem to have that problem. He seemed comfortable with the pressure and the deception, or maybe it was more than that.
I think Ned always was what one of his supervisors described Ned as an edge worker. Ned was always right at the edge of going off to the criminal side.
And then one day, he did the unthinkable. He brought the criminals home with him to his leafy upscale suburban house. Just shows up with Toby and one of his sidekicks. They all just sauntered up the driveway together.
Well, they looked just like motorcycle guys. The hair, the instead of having a belt, having belts that are like chains or whatever. Their jeans are not like fashionable. Their jeans are just, beat up jeans, and they've got Fu Manchu mustaches and long hair. They're not trying to give an appearance of like good looking. I thought, oh my God, what will my neighbors think? I hope they didn't see them come in, because they look like really rough characters. And my neighbors belonged to Oakland Hills Country Club.
No one, and I truly mean no one here, would ever mistake Toby or any of his buddies for golfers.
This was like the ultimate intrusion into my life, into our life. It just is unheard of, it just was. It was not appropriate, and it was. I felt it was dangerous. People could have, followed them or seen them, or now they know where we live.
Okay, so that's Kathy the homemaker worrying. But here's Kathy the FBI agent, and she's also worried.
I had a lot of my own informants, and they would never have come to my home, or I never even would have like lunch with them or something. I mean, I'm an FBI agent. I'm a law enforcement person. Why would they even want to sit down any place and be seen with me? You've just compromised that confidential relationship.
I spoke to a number of Ned's former colleagues, and they pretty much all agreed with Kathy. No one brought an informant home with them. It was too risky. Oddly enough, the one person I spoke with from Ned's FBI days who had also done this was his direct supervisor. He told me that he and Ned were, quote-unquote, rebels. For his part, Ned defends himself, saying it was a judgment call. The decision to bring Toby home, it was calculated.
Well, it depends on how much trust you have in your sources. And that also builds trust with the sources that can get you killed any second.
Well, I'm curious, did you do it just out of kind of professional relationship building, or did you do it because these were your friends and this was your wife?
I think to build a bond with the sources, you depend on those guys not to stand up and say, hey, he's a fucking FBI agent. And you have to build this bond. So whatever I was doing seemed to work. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I can't teach it. I can't say that's what to do. But that's what I did.
Kathy, she didn't like it, but she didn't confront Ned or overrule him. And Ned never really asked for permission either.
Oh, no. No. See, Ned never checked in with me first on anything. Our marriage was more like, hey, look, we're going to move to a new house. Come here, I'll take you and we'll look at it. My marriage was more traditional in that regard, that, he said what we were going to do. Back then, and I'm going to blame this on the times a lot, but probably also the way I was raised, it just did not occur to me to object to my husband. He has this, he's got this, it'll be fine.
But this wasn't a one-off occasion. Ned brought Toby home with him multiple times. Kathy remembers them all hanging out on the back deck, cooking burgers, super casual. It was kind of the opposite of the whole undercover shtick. Like in Donnie Brasco, where the FBI agent has two completely separate lives. One is a gangster and one is a suburban dad with a Teflon firewall separating them. It was almost as if Ned Timmins and Ed Thomas were morphing into a single being. Perhaps this was inevitable given Ned's strategy of building trust, but this isn't how Kathy sees it.
you don't have to choose that path. You don't have to choose to work a case in that way. You don't have to choose to go deep cover. It all evolves. But I know for him, he felt like it was just spinning into the next, into the next, into the next. And he told me that he felt like he didn't know how he was ever going to get out of it.
In the midst of all of this, Ned's game plan paid off big time when he gets the break he'd been waiting for. And it involved, of all people, Toby's little brother, a guy who went by the nickname Shine. One day, Ned got what seemed like a big lead from Toby, though on its face, it seemed a bit far-fetched.
Toby says, hey, I got to tell you, my brother is into something really big. But he won't let us near it because he's afraid I'll rob it. I said, what is it? He says, it has to do with airplanes and boats and tractor-trailer loads of dope coming to Detroit. And Toby knew he was into something big.
Ned didn't know exactly what to make of this. Planes, boats, tractor-trailers, all filled with weed? Was it possible that Toby, the walking hand grenade, really had a brother who was a big-time criminal orchestrating all of this? If this was true, how had Ned not picked up on this sooner? Toby's brother went by the name Shine. His real name was Clinton Anderson. He died in the late 90s, so I had to kind of piece together a picture of who he was.
I don't have the background as to why they called him Shine. But my Uncle Clint, in my memories of him, he was a teddy bear.
This is Jesse Anderson, Toby's son. Shine was his uncle, and Jesse loved his uncle, adored him. I talked to a bunch of people who knew Shine well, and they all described him pretty much as this big, lovable guy. One person said he would have made a perfect Santa Claus. Another said he looked like Wilford Brimley, the grandfatherly actor who starred in all the Quaker Oats commercials. When things got rough at home for Jesse, he actually went to live with his Uncle Clint for a while. He loved being there.
Geez, just like anywhere else, right? Kids running around, playing football in the front yard, watching football, watching baseball, life in the 70s and early 80s, gambling, playing darts, shooting pool, normal way of life.
Little Jesse had never seen a dad who could be depended on before.
I guess I wanted that from my dad, and that's what